So I have my scale, and we're gonna start out by measuring 150 grams of active sourdough starter. I always feed mine 14 to 16 hours before I make sourdough. 150 grams sourdough starter going in. Now we're adding 350 grams of warm filtered water. I heat mine up in the microwave for about 55 seconds and it's perfect. And then you just want to whisk it until it gets nice and bubbly. You see how bubbly that is? Okay, I'm going back in with my scale and we're going to measure out our liquid ingredients. So I'm using date syrup today as my sweetener. You can also use molasses or honey. And this, I always say, adjust to taste. It really depends how much you want your base bread to be sweet. I always like to do 20 grams of sweetener. So that's what I'm doing today. And then I also always add some sort of oil to my bread. Sometimes it's butter, like in my croissant loaves, but today I'm doing 20 grams of olive oil. Okay, now we're gonna add our flours. So I'm going in today with 350 grams bread flour. You can also use all-purpose flour. I just happen to have bread flour in the house, so lucky enough I get to use it, but most of the time I'm using all-purpose flour because bread flour is expensive and I don't always have it. And the other flour I'm using today is 150 grams whole wheat flour. And then lastly, we're going in with 11 grams of kosher salt. And now we're gonna mix this just until it forms a shaggy dough. You don't wanna overmix. Okay, now we're gonna cover it with a tea towel and let it rest for 1 hour. Okay, so it's been an hour, so it's time for our first set of stretch and folds. Here's what our dough looks like. So now you're going to just scoop the dough and pull it up and then let it fall back down. You're gonna turn your bowl a quarter of the way and repeat this process, doing it 8 times or going twice around the bowl. Now we're gonna cover it and let it rest for another 30 minutes. I'm gonna start with about a cup of chocolate chips. So I'm going in and chopping the chocolate chips because I wanted a variation in size when it comes to the chocolate. So for the caramelized banana filling, I went ahead and I smashed up an old brown banana that I had. So it looks pretty questionable, but you just wanna mash up your banana. Over medium-high heat, I'm heating up 2.5 tablespoons, roughly, vegan butter with about half a cup of brown sugar. You don't need to stir this too much. You just want it to start caramelizing. So as the butter melts, you can stir the brown sugar in, and then you're gonna wanna let it simmer over this heat to caramelize. To let this bubble over medium heat until it starts to have more of a caramel-like aroma. So this shouldn't take too long, probably about 3 minutes. Okay, so the caramel has started to smell a lot like caramel. So I turned off the heat and we're going to add our banana. I'm also going to add a sprinkle of cinnamon in here. And I'm going to add a little bit of nutmeg as well. Now I'm going to heat this up on low heat again until it starts to become more of a single mixture, and this will just allow some of the water from the bananas also to evaporate out of your caramel mixture. It's time to add our chocolate chips to our dough. I'm just gonna pour in about half the bowl of chocolate chips, and we're gonna do our first set of stretch and folds, so that you can get those chocolate chips folded in. And now we'll add the rest of our chocolate chips. right, now we're gonna let this rest for 30 minutes and then we'll do our final set of stretch and folds. For our final set of stretch and folds, you're going to be doing them slightly differently. So you're just going to grab opposite sides of the dough and pull up with your hands and allow the dough to fall over the sides of your hands. And you only do this 4 times, and you want to alternate the sides that you're pulling the dough up on. So I went on one side, went to the opposite side, and let the dough fall again into a nice uniform ball. Now leave your dough to bulk rest until it doubles in size, about 3 to 4 hours. Here you can see it doubled in size. And so now I'm ready to roll up my sourdough loaf. So I'm going to flour a clean surface and scrape all the dough out of the bowl onto the floured surface. And you're going to want to press the dough out into a large rectangle. I would say about 16 inches in length and about 8 to 10 inches in width. So once you pat that down, you want to flour the top of your dough again. This is just going to help any moisture that's in the dough not seep out. And you're going to add about half of your caramel mixture, and you want to spread that all over the dough. Then you're going to grab one side and fold it about 1/3 of the way in, and you want to pat that flat and also flour that surface as well. Once flattened, you're going to add half of the remaining caramel mixture and spread that all over the dough just as you did before. And then you want to fold the last side over, and this is where you really want to pinch those seams so none of your filling seeps out. And then you're going to pat this down again to get some air out and make more surface for the last bit of caramel. Add the remaining caramel, spread that out, and then we're going to roll this into your final loaf. So you're going to grab one side and pull towards you as you roll so that you get more surface area. Pinch the sides as you do this. You really want to make sure there's no open seams or else your filling may leak out. So be really mindful in pinching your dough. Finally, place the seam side up in your banneton and allow to rest overnight. The next morning, you want to flip your dough out onto a piece of parchment and score with whatever design you'd like. I did a pretty simple design here because there's lots of fillings and I didn't want to interfere with the structure of the dough on the inside with my scoring. I also like to spray mine with water to help with a bubbly crust and create steam in the Dutch oven. Now with the lid on, this is going to go into the oven at 475 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. And then finally, you're going to drop your oven temperature to 150 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes until you reach the final crust color that you'd like. And once cooled, you can cut into this wonderful loaf and enjoy it. I hope you have the time to slow down and make this wonderful loaf. It is truly so good and magical. You can find this recipe on my website. Let me know if you make it, and thanks for watching.